Well, alright. So for today, I would like to talk about one of my favorite shows of all time, Red Dwarf. But not quite particularly that show itself. There are a lot of shows from the UK that are really successful, and a lot of American networks will try to make an American version of that show. Some are really successful, some are horrible garbage, and some don't even make it past the pilot. And that's what I'm yammering about today. The Red Dwarf USA failed pilot. Things didn't quite turn out so well for it. So let's take a looky-loo at the pilot itself, then we'll do some yammering on about it after. Alright, let's go. Okay, so what do we got here? We got the ship's super smart computer named Holly, who breaks the fourth wall and basically tells the audience what the whole lowdown is. There's this huge mining ship called Red Dwarf. It's massive. If a crew member dies, they can be replaced as a hologram after. And well, now we're all caught up. Alright, so we meet the two main characters from the show. Dave Lister, who's a lovable, handsome, well-manicured, lazy slob. And the guy who is one rank above him, Arnold Rimmer. And they are the two lowest ranking members on the ship. They're just vending machine repairmen, basically. Rimmer takes his job super-de-duper-de seriously, and Lister super-de-duperly doesn't care. Quite the dynamic. These two lovable characters meet up with Crichton. He is a mechanoid. Shows up on the ship trying to find the captain. But as has been explained, the ship is so freaking massive that Crichton totally gets lost. And he asks Lister for help. Hey, how the heck do I find the captain? I don't know. I guess it's really difficult to find out where the command center of the ship is, you know, once you're a part of the crew. A little further down, we find out that Lister has a cat named Frankenstein. This was a cat he rescued from a restaurant on the moon planet Titan, where they eat cats there. He's like, no way, man, this cat's wicked awesome. But he breaks every policy about bringing animals on board. The cat's not registered, the cat hasn't been checked out, the cat hasn't been quarantined. Who knows what this cat is carrying, right? And turns out this cat's pregnant. So of course the doctors would have to, do a biopsy on this cat and, make it dead in the process. It would kind of suck, to rescue this cat only to make it deaded by, getting it medically checked out. He gets Crichton to hide the kitty cat in the place they'll never look because internal sensors aren't a thing in the future? No. So because Lister's not cooperating with the crew about the cat here, as punishment, he is put into stasis for 6 months, which is basically suspended animation. But sometime during this time in stasis, the crew was hammered with the radiation leak, and then they were made dead as a result. So Holly kept Lister in stasis until the radiation levels were low enough for him to get kicked out of there, but it turns out it took 3 million years to do that. Like, holy jeez, eh? But seeing as Holly has been online well past her lifespan, she's starting to kind of break down. She kind of is not the super smart computer she used to be. She's kind of senile and has been dumbed down a bit. And of course, the old lovable Rimmer has been reanimated as a hologram. So that's a pretty fun way to spend eternity, right? But they also come across Crichton, in which this whole time he was disassembled in a repair bay. Poor bastard, right? So Lister puts him back together, but turns out there is a humanoid life form on the ship other than Lister. We find out that it's a creature that has evolved from Lister's cat, Frankenstein. The cat was put in a cargo bay which was shielded from the radiation, which made it live and stuff. And after 3 million years, the cats evolved, they built their own society, they had a civil war, and they killed each other off, all except for this one cat here. And he doesn't seem bothered by all that. I guess that's kind of a cat kind of mentality. So all of our fantastic new friends here have seen versions of themselves from the future come back to them to give them a very important message of what they have to do in order to survive, but they took too long yammering on about nothings, and the important chunk of the message didn't get through, which is just actually funny. So based off that, they're like, yeah, you know what the plan is? We're gonna head back to Earth. Even though we've been drifting away from it for 3 million years, it's about time we turned around. Which is actually kind of funny because after the radiation happened, wouldn't you think Holly would kind of inform anyone? Or maybe go back to home base around Earth and something? And that's how this first fantastic chapter ends, and we just can't wait to see some more, right? Yee. Yeah, that wasn't so great. Ugh. So that was unfortunately an empty husk of a show. It looked really good, but there was really no substance behind anything, and especially behind a lot of the characters. That was a problem that the original show creators, Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, had with the US version. Like, there was no character building, there was no world building, there wasn't any foundation to really get you to understand anything about these characters. Grant and Naylor did write a revised version of the US script to kind of say, hey, here's some things to kind of fill in some holes, kind of make the audience understand certain things, but that was thrown out the window, and as a result, you got this flat piece of something or other resembling a show. But a second pilot was made, with Grant and Naylor kind of doing a lot of the work on it. So take a look at it for yourself and let me know what you think of these. So, this one's not really an episode pilot, it's just a Yucca Flux compilation mishmash of a bunch of concepts. Like, hey, aren't these neat? Wouldn't you like to see this in an episode later? And it's just a lot of recycled material. It starts off with an episode recap of the original Red Dwarf episode, Rimmer World, just so you, the loving audience who has never seen Red Dwarf, can get a bit of an idea of what's happening over yonder with the original show. So Lister gives an update on the crew and the whole situation in the guise of a video distress call, recapping the characters and how they got there and the crew being made dead and all that and how far off course they are, blah blah blah. After we get that quick recap, they start the segment of, here's a concept of some future episodes for Red Dwarf USA, and it's just recreating things from the original show. So they remade a scene from the episode called Marooned, where Lister and Rimmer are stuck on an ice planet talking about food, trying not to get hungry. And they just reuse footage of an original Red Dwarf episode called Camille, where Creighton meets up with a shape-shifting creature, a Gelf, where she is presenting as the image of another mechanoid. The major change that happened in this one as opposed to the original one is that the cat is completely different. For the main thing, the cat is now female, which is an interesting dynamic right off the bat, but even more so the whole personality of the cat. The original cat's more kind of like a house cat. This version of the cat is kind of focusing more on a feral cat. So this cat's a totally fearless cat. It's an aggressive cat. If they come across an alien, she wants to attack it and kill it, just like a feral outdoor cat would do with things. Cats gots to eat, right? So they did write a quick little scene of her interacting with Lister, and it was, actually not too bad. But not a whole lot of things in this one that were yowza wowza. And yeah, there was no further looking into the show after this point. So bam. So we have hit the end of the tunnel with Red Dwarf USA. Yeah, so there be a bunch of differences between these two shows here. Let us first look at the character differences between the two shows. So our lovable main character, Dave Lister, for the UK, the whole joke with him is that he's the last human alive, and he is quite an unsavory. He's a slob, he's lazy, he's a procrastinator. He's kind of like an average Joe, but kind of less than an average Joe, But he still has a heart of gold. US Lister, he has some of those same personalities, not so much of a slob. He's still lazy, he still likes to drink. He's like the Hollywood hunk caricature of a character. Well manicured, perfect teeth, probably cleans his clothes regularly. But as many on the UK side kind of state, like if you're gonna have an American playing the Lister character, it should be more of a John Belushi character, like from Animal House. Now UK's Rimmer, he has so much character depth to him. He's power mad, even though he has no power to make him mad. He's a cowardly egomaniac of a failure. The US Rimmer, his personality is basically as empty as his hologram shell. Nothing to him. He's just there. The cat on both sides of the pond are pretty much the same character. Interesting to note that the UK's cat, Danny John Jules, was very impressed that the US cat was portrayed by Hinton Battle. Now Danny and his mates all knew of Hinton pretty well because they have the same kind of entertainment background, especially in dancing, in theater, in acting. So when Danny found out that Tony Award winner Hinton Battle is portraying his character, he was actually pretty impressed. Creighton, of course, is the exact same character and exact same actor. So no difference there. Holly in the US is played by Jane Leaves, who will later make a pretty big splash for her career in the show Frasier, but her character is pretty much much the same as the two UK Hollies, the male and female, and actually I think that's a pretty good job. The US version of Kochanski is more of a snob, more of a B, whereas the original UK Kochanski was actually pretty laid back and pretty cool. The UK's captain is a bit more of a jerky hard ass, whereas the US's captain is a bit more caring and nice. Both of the first officers on either side, pretty much the same character, just kind of blah. Of course, in Pilot 2, we had two new actors portraying two characters. Terry Farrell took over the role of Kat and was a completely different character, as I previously explained. Terry Farrell would also go on in science fiction as Jadzia Dax in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Anthony Fusco took over the role of Rimmer, did a better job, but still the same character and still kind of flat. So if you get to the pilot, most of the things are the same, right? There's this massive mining ship called the Red Dwarf. There's a cat smuggled aboard. Main character goes into stasis. Crew gets killed by a radiation leak. 3 million years later, Lister's let out. Cats have evolved. Rimmer's a hologram. They're heading back to Earth. Boom, right? There were a lot of differences in it as well, though. For instance, for US, Creighton popped up in episode 1, whereas in the UK, he made his first appearance in series 2, episode 1, and didn't become a full cast member until series 3. For the UK, the Cat Society made an arc and left the Red Dwarf, leaving only the lame and the sick behind. Whereas in the US, the cats had a civil war and killed all each other off. Bit more gloomy. Now when it comes to Lister and Rimmer, if going forward the bulk of the show is going to be surrounding these two and their kind of character interactions, based on the US pilot, man, you really have nothing to go on. It's like, oh, these are two people who just hang out. Whereas in the UK show, from episode 1, you learned how much these two despised each other and how they got under each other's skin. Much more of the odd couple in space than the US version, where it's just like roommates. For the UK side, not only do they explore their hated relationship, but how low down the chain of command that they are. Really gives you a broader scope of like, wow, these are the two people running the ship? Like, how horrible is that? They are literally the two lowest crew members on Red Dwarf. So that's kind of really an example of how things were glossed over in this show. There were so many things, from character developments to the story building aspects of the show, that in the US version, you had no depth to and you didn't relate to anything because it was just rushed through. Whereas in the UK version, you understood the characters, you understood the situations and everything, and you really did relate to them. So that's really the main difference of the shows and why the US pilots failed. So this kind of leaves us with a big what if question, right? Like, what if the Red Dwarf USA pilots were successful? What would this have done to the original UK show? Obviously, right off the bat, you're losing Robert Llewellyn as Creighton, and there was talk about Chris Berry potentially going over to the US to portray his Rimmer over there, so you could be losing two of your main characters right off the bat. So the US pilot was in 1992. That would have been roughly right after Series 5 of the UK Red Dwarf. So before and after Series 5, we did see a bunch of character changes in the show, so that may have given us a bit of an indication that things might be okay. We had two different actors portray Holly, the original male version, until we had the female counterpart, and that worked out fine. It was pretty much the same character. For Creighton, Robert Llewellyn was the second actor to portray the character. First time we see Creighton, he was portrayed by David Ross in just a one-off episode, and then when the character was full swing character on the show, you got Robert in there. David Ross did do the voice of Taki Toaster after a while, so at least he was still in the realm. So changing up actors, thus far ain't so bad. So Chris Berry did actually leave Red Dwarf UK. He was working on a different show, The British Empire, so his character was replaced by Christine Kochanski from a different alternate universe. And that Kochanski was portrayed by Chloe Annette, who was the second actor to portray Christine Kochanski. The original Kochanski was done by Claire Grogan, who was kind of busy being a TV presenter, so there already have been a lot of different character changes, actor changes, so you can kind of look at it like, yeah, maybe it still would have been a success. They could have brought in a third actor to be the new Creighton. We already seen what the Rimmer replacement would have been, so it still could have trucked on being not so bad. But of course, Chris Berry did come back eventually in all his flared nostrily glory, so things were kind of put back in place after, so yeah. And for the US one, I think it would have been pretty good. It just would have been an alternate reality. Like, Red Dwarf already has shown a lot of different alternate realities in their times. Heck, you could even actually almost have a crossover episode between the UK and US alternate realities. This is all moot points, and we always have this wonderful episode to look at. Right right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, feel free to do so. Or anything else, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, have a great day. Thanks.